Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. Today I'm in my usual filming corner, but I'm on the ground this time. I don't think you can see it on camera, but I have a little makeshift desk in front of me because I will be using it to do my makeup. And not just any makeup, I will be experimenting a little bit by trying makeup for each of the Lolita substyles. And in today's case, that's going to be classic, gothic, and sweet Lolita, but I've also thrown old school into the mix. I know there's some debate and not everyone thinks that old school is its own substyle, but I think the fact that old school is a different enough aesthetic and has a pretty specific following of people who only wear old school, the same way that some people only wear classic, I just feel like the community treats it as a separate substyle, and I will be doing that today for convenience and for fun. Along the way, I'll also be talking a little bit about the history of makeup in Lolita fashion, some of the trends, what look is trying to be achieved, how it differs in different substyles, the influences, things like that. It's not going to be a complete accurate timeline. I will just be talking about some of the impressions I have based on research and what I've seen in the community. As much as I love talking about Lolita history on this channel, I am most knowledgeable about Sweet Lolita and Angelic Pretty specifically, so if there's any mistakes or things that you feel aren't accurate for the other substyles, please feel free to correct me in the comments. It's always great to share our passion and learn together about Lolita in that way. Since I'm going to be going from the most simple makeup to the most elaborate, I'm going to start off with old school, and let's get right into the first look. Let's get started with our old school look. Overall, I'm going to be keeping it pretty simple, so the first thing I'm starting with is a powder base with a little bit of concealer, and generally speaking, the look I'm going for is more influenced by sweet old school or old school makeup that was specifically recommended for Lolita. You can find a lot of looks from this era for makeup that have a lot of variety, especially the more gothic looks, because there was a lot of influence from the gothic music scene and visual kei, which meant that gothic old school makeup looks were often more extravagant. But I'm going to be following a little bit of a tutorial that I found from a GLB, and this is one of the older GLBs too. What this tutorial was suggesting was a simple peachy sort of orangey eye, except it was actually kind of metallic looking. I didn't have that, so I just went with a kind of orangey taupe-ish eyeshadow I had. I used a white eyeshadow for the inner corner and base as well, which was the shape that the makeup tutorial kind of was going for as well. But overall, we're keeping it very, very light, very natural. You will find older guides about makeup in Lolita in the Western community, specifically emphasizing not wearing too much makeup, not looking like you're wearing too much makeup. The key point going forward with all makeup for Lolita is that it has always been popular to emphasize the eyes. Makeup looks that really make the eye look bigger, cuter, often slightly droopy, with the rest of the makeup being relatively subtle, a simple base, usually without any contouring, some blushing in a bright color, and a lip of choice. And the foundation of that really comes from old school makeup looks, because this specific era really recommended something relatively cute but natural. And of course, I did forget to mention mascara, but that has been included in Lolita makeup looks since the dawn of time, I would say. It's funny to look back at like the LiveJournal era and see people debating about makeup and how much makeup was acceptable in Lolita, and how a lot of people would say that they just wore mascara and a bit of powder base and a lipstick or lip gloss, and that was it. There were so many people who were saying that too much makeup didn't suit Lolita, and I do feel like we still have that conversation now surrounding things more specifically like the influencer baddie style makeup looking maybe a bit weird with Lolita because of kind of like the clashing intentions or drag makeup, and I'm not going to get into that debate here, but I just think it's kind of interesting to consider how much makeup in Lolita as a subject has evolved in the community, and not just in terms of like style or what we're doing, but also the discussions around it too. The specific tutorial that I was using actually seemed to be using liquid eyeliner, but I generally associate pencil eyeliner with that like
late 90s, early 2000s era, so I'm going to be using that here. I feel like anyone who did makeup in the late 90s and early 2000s know that we were kind of working with like a sponge applicator and chalky eyeshadow and a dream, but there was a lot of black eyeshadow, a lot of metallics, a lot of sparkles in some of the more heavy makeup looks. You can see these in street snaps here and there, but generally speaking, it seems like the old school Lolitas, or just the Lolitas at the time of what we now consider the old school era, who were wearing sweet or classic leaning outfits, were going for a more natural look. To bring some cuteness to this, a bit more of those like doll-like features that I mentioned, other than just emphasizing the eyes, I'm going to be doing quite a obvious spot of blush, I would say. I normally wear a lot of blush, but this time I'm applying it like right in the center of my cheeks for the world to see. And normally I do a little bit of blush on my nose, but I feel like that's a very modern thing, so I'm not going to be doing it here. Again, just keeping that base really, really simple. The kiss of death, or the final touch, however you want to see it, to this makeup look was these metallic lips. I figured if I did not have the metallic eyeshadow, I should at least have the metallic lip. This was also kind of featured in that tutorial I was following. Looks a bit crazy to me, and it's like super cool toned, which I don't really like how it looks on me, but historical accuracy is important here, so we are going with that. And so let me present to you my final old school makeup look. This was a bit of a difficult makeup look for me, to be honest, because it's so simple. I'm not really used to this specific style of makeup, and I can't say I wore a lot of makeup in the time period that this look was actually popular in. I was born in 1997, so there just like wasn't a lot of opportunity to be wearing makeup in the 90s for me, and into the 2000s I started wearing makeup like at the end of high school, at the beginning of college, so I was not really playing around with it that much. So this wasn't really my era to reference, and it's very simple. It isn't really transformative in a sense. A lot of modern makeup looks are about accentuating or changing certain features, and this was really about playing with what's already there and adding some fun without making it super obvious that you're wearing makeup. For classic Lolita, we're going to be taking a lot of the basic inspiration from that old school look and translating it into a bit more of a modern Lolita makeup look overall. Now, classic Lolitas, I find, or at least from my very accurate scientific studies, tend to lean towards two different looks. One of those is very neutral and subtle. It's very close to old school makeup in that it's light eyeliner, mascara, a simple clean base that's either powder or liquid, a little bit of a more neutral or peachy or brownish blush, and a almost nude or very simple lip. That's the first look, and the other one is usually more vintage influenced, and you're gonna have more obvious eyeshadow but still in neutral colors like brown or dusty pink or like a coral, but you're probably gonna see some eyeliner here, and most significantly I think a red lip. Red lips specifically have always been in Lolita, but I think that they got more popular after the old school era, entering the mid 2010s, and they have kind of been here to stay. You see red lips in Gothic, Sweet, and Classic, but I find that you see this really bright vintage inspired lip the most in Classic Lolita, a very matte, very bright tart red. I think it looks really nice, especially with more historical or vintage influenced looks, and I'm going to be leaning more towards that, though it's not going to be super vintagey or anything. I'm still kind of trying to keep it in the realm of Lolita inspiration and kind of what I would do if I was going to be wearing a classic coordinate. One thing here is I really want to keep the tones more neutral, more dusty, more old-timey, etc. You know, this eyeshadow has been left in an attic to collect dust for a few years. That's the vibe we're going for. So I'm going to be using a very dusty pink eyeshadow for this, and I'm going to be using some browns and orangey tones for the highlighter. The eyes, of course, again, we're gonna lean into a makeup look that makes your eyes look bigger and emphasizes the eye a bit, but most classic Lolitas that I saw did not really overemphasize this. They're using more the placement of the like dark areas of the eyeshadow and the highlights to add a bit of depth and size to the eye, but not really changing their natural shapes or anything like that. The eye here is staying mostly one color. It's that dusty pink I mentioned before with a little bit of a kind of glittery peach in the middle to add a tiny bit of depth. And then most of the dark shadow I'm going to be using on my under eye is brown eyeshadow with a brown pencil liner and also a brown liquid liner that we're going to be using later. And I'm going to be using a very orangey, very coral glitter highlighter just for the inner corners of my eye. Unlike the old school look where I only used a powder base, I'm going to use my regular foundation, and I use a cushion foundation and I mix in a little bit of liquid foundation because you will see that this foundation looks pale on me. This is more evident on camera. It blends a lot better with my skin tone in real life, but that's why I add that little bit of liquid foundation to it, because or else it's just too pale. I feel like the popular classic Lolita makeup is perfectly in between the popular sweet Lolita makeup and old school, in that you have the traits typically associated with Lolita fashion and the makeup that Lolitas tend to wear, but you have a more subtle influence of old school sweet trends becoming kind of cemented in Lolita history over time. I think you see some influence there on classic Lolita. The OTT Sweet era really ushered in a different style of makeup, and I do think that that kind of bled over to the other substyles, where more extravagant makeup becoming more popular means that what seems subtle in every substyle has changed. I do really like the fact that classic Lolita makeup is very neutral, because I feel like you can kind of end up wearing it with anything. I used to not really like neutral makeup that much because I was always trying to match even though I don't really wear neutrals, I still match the color of my dress to my makeup. That's mostly because I don't really like how these orange colors look on me. I prefer like more cool pinks. But I think that this makeup is a really, really good place to start if you're not sure what you want your makeup style to be in Lolita, because it can really suit any style. I've seen this type of makeup used in more Gothic looks because it's so neutral and subtle, and I've seen it used in sweet because it's quite mature and it can complement that sort of popular, mature, sweet, modern look, and I really like it there. And even the red lip is really popular in Sweet Lolita too, after I think the influence of Risa and Larm. So I would say that if you're not sure what you want to do, but you want to experiment with makeup in Lolita, classic Lolitas are a really great place to look, because it's such a just pretty and timeless for Lolita type of look. So the big influence for this specific makeup look that I was referencing was Mint Kismet, who is a Lolita model for the brand Royal Princess Alice. I really, really love her coordinates, and I thought that her makeup for classic Lolita was really pretty and would be easy to take inspiration from, though I also did just look through the classic Lolita hashtag, and that's where I kind of found that there was people who were doing that more vintage look I was talking about, and people just doing a general subtle approach. I don't think that classic Lolita makeup has changed much over time, similar to goth in that way, which we'll talk about later, but I think it's just the actual products that have changed. I do think that like we have a lot more like highlighter and glitter now than we used to. The shiny stuff used to be so metallic, and now it's much more just like sparkly and fresh, and I think that makes a big difference in how the makeup ends up looking. A cream foundation versus a powder is also super different, but looking through classic Lolita snaps and old school snaps, there's not a ton of difference. It's really just product and personal style, I think. And speaking of personal style, since I did not have a blush that actually matched the tones of this, I just reused the eyeshadow. And like I mentioned at the very beginning of this video, I'm going to be doing a red lip with the one red lipstick I have. And this bright red lip looks really nice in my opinion with that more neutral eye. It's that really typical thing where you have a bright lip and a neutral eye, right? But with the cuteness that's emphasized in makeup that's popular for Lolita fashion, I really feel like a red lip says something a bit different than it does in normie makeup. It's a bit more bold for Lolita fashion, and I really like that. I think it's really cute. It's less common, I think, than like pink lipstick, and I think that it looks really nice with historical, vintage, and autumnal chords especially. So here is my classic Lolita makeup look.
Alright, so Sweet Lolita makeup. First, sorry if the audio sounds a bit weird. I'm having issues with my mic, so I'm just using my phone's one. But for this makeup, I will be doing my regular, sort of everyday Sweet Lolita makeup. This is the basic makeup that I wear with every coordinate that's on this channel or my Instagram. Now, my makeup is actually much more influenced by Korean and Chinese makeup beauty trends, as well as learning from some like Western makeup artists just over time, but I'm not as influenced by the like stereotypical Japanese Sweet Lolita makeup, and I'll explain why by explaining like what that is. Sweet Lolita makeup is typically associated with OTT Sweet, and what you're going to see is the most obvious emphasis on the eyes of any Lolita style. My base is the same as always. It's a cream base with powder on top, and Sweet Lolita makeup typically uses a very matte, very simple base with some blush, but you will actually see a lot of Sweet Lolita models in the OTT era with not a heavy ton of blush at all, actually. Again, the emphasis is really on the eye, and this is usually quite a bit amount of eyeliner, both on the top and bottom lid, sometimes with some white liner on like the waterline, and most predominantly, or most iconically, I guess, is big false lashes. Now, in the OTT Sweet era in the 2010s, you also saw people using more colored eyeshadow like mint, sax, lavender, bright pink, and you would also see people applying more blush and sometimes even stickers and gems and that kind of thing to their face. But like I mentioned, there's also a lot of OTT Sweet Lolitas who didn't wear that much blush and didn't wear those like sparkly gems or anything like that, but the eyes were kind of always the main focus. Now, the reason that I say I'm less influenced by this is because the eye makeup is relatively simple other than the false lashes. So you're gonna have a sort of cute round, maybe slightly droopy shape, and you're gonna do that with black eyeliner on the top and bottom, and then you're gonna apply false eyelashes, and that's pretty much like you're most of the way there. My personal Sweet Lolita makeup, I tend to do a bit more emphasis on the actual eyeshadow part, and I use like a few different colors and I blend them out, and I don't really wear false eyelashes often unless I'm going for the stereotypical 2010s OTT Sweet look, just because I don't find wearing false eyelashes pleasant at all. Also, I have hooded eyes, and this makeup style, the OTT Sweet one, is a bit less flattering on me, and it also makes it pointless to do eyeshadow because then the eyelashes and eyeliner literally hide everything. I already have small and closely set eyes, so I just don't really like how this makeup looks on me that much, and I much prefer the influence of like Korean makeup and Chinese makeup trends that they've had on my makeup. I find that they've complemented my features better or helped me learn better. Now, unlike Gothic and classic Lolita makeup, to be honest, I think you see the most drastic difference in terms of like timeline with Sweet Lolita makeup. You have the old school Sweet era, which I've already talked about, and then you move into a sort of transitional period between like what we call old school and the OTT Sweet era, where you would see like some colored eyeshadow and you would see eyeliner, but you weren't really seeing full
false eyelashes or anything like that. And then the OTT sweet boom happened, and around a similar or same time, you also had the influence of Gyaru on Lolita fashion. So of course, the eye shape was even more dramatic, false eyelashes were popular, but you were also seeing bottom lashes at that point. And then we entered the modern sweet era and the era of like the 2014s, 2016s, where people were influenced by more mature sweet and swasic styles and OTT classic and also Larm. And you start seeing a bit of a different type of makeup at that point. I feel like the OTT classic / OTT sweet classic era was a bit more simple in terms of like the false eyelashes and that kind of thing, but you would often see like brighter lips and more highlighter, more neutral eyeshadows too. And then of course with Larm's influence, the bold red lip is really popular, and you pretty much only see neutral eyeshadow now, or at least I'm talking about like in ads and on models and that kind of thing. Like every era has had influential Lolitas when it comes to makeup, and I would say that like now it's still Risa, but maybe that'll change soon. I don't know. Of course, I'm still somewhat influenced by like what is trending in the overall Lolita community, and of course my makeup also emphasizes the eyes and that round eye shape and like a more downwards eye shape, but I try and achieve that more with like a light to dark gradient from the inner to the outer edge of my eye. I also find I've liked my makeup better since I stopped using liquid or heavy eyeliner. I use a brown liquid liner now, and instead of drawing it like on top of my eyelid and extending out like a typical Western cat wing, I usually draw it kind of within the crease of my eyelid now, and I use it more as like a defining shadow than a dramatic eyeliner. I also really like using sparkles and glitter in my makeup, and I do find that that's a bit less common with Japanese, at least with Japanese Lolita makeup that I've seen. It tends to be a bit more matte overall versus like, you know, when you think about those sparkly Korean liquid eyeliners, I love those. I love the sparkles that are like Chinese makeup that are trending right now. So I just find myself a bit more influenced. I also feel like modern sweet Lolita makeup is very neutral or corally in terms of color. Like it's very orange, pink, and like red lips that are popular. And I don't really like that color palette with my sweet Lolita coordinates, so I really like that. A lot of Korean makeup brands and a lot of Chinese makeup brands sell more like pastels and more like colors to play with, and I really like that they sell monochromatic palettes that are like just pink or just purple, versus this is more for Western brands, but they'll sell like a palette that's like a bunch of crazy colors, and I don't know how they go together. I guess I had a bit less to say about sweet Lolita makeup because I'm so used to it, and I feel like everyone knows the OTT sweet era as the most iconic, but still, I hope you enjoyed this little ramble part and my sweet Lolita makeup look here, even if you've seen it a bunch of times on my channel already. Let's jump in to Gothic. This was probably the second most intimidating makeup look to try. I was actually more intimidated by the old school one, believe it or not, probably because of how simple it is. But Gothic makeup I have done a few times now. I think this is like my 4th or 5th time. I've worn Gothic coordinates twice, and I've dressed up in my girlfriend's dark clothes for Halloween once, so I've worn black eyeshadow before. It doesn't scare me, you know? Now, what I want to say about Gothic makeup, to me, is that contrary to popular belief, I think that Gothic Lolita makeup emphasizes the Gothic aspect much more than the Lolita aspect. And the reason I want to say this is because every time you will Google Gothic Lolita makeup, you will get like Victorian doll, Gothic Lolita doll makeup with this makeup that hugely emphasizes the eyes, a very circular droopy shape, a lot of highlighter, very, very cute, very blushed. And when you look at what actual Gothic Lolitas are wearing, I don't think that's the makeup look that anyone is really going for. Once again, you have the camp of people who basically do not wear makeup or wear a bit of mascara and eyeliner, and I think that this can go across substyles, but for people who wear more obvious makeup with Gothic Lolita, I think it is quite a heavier and more stand out type of look than classic or old school or even sweet sometimes. And that's just inherently gonna happen when you're wearing eyeshadow colors like black and purple and red and wearing dark colored lipsticks as well. So I'm going with a black and very subtly, very dark purple eyeshadow look. And I'm just playing to my natural eye shape. It's going to be kind of like extended past my eye, but very circular and pretty simple. And I'm going to be doing a bit of eyeliner and mascara, but with it being black, you're barely going to see the mascara, as well as using a cool toned highlighter to add a few details here and there. I'm going to be using white to blend out the eyeshadow just to really keep it simple and not add too much depth to the color palette. I really want to keep it just almost black and white with, like I said, a bit of very dark purple. It almost looks black, especially on camera. Very obviously, the influence on Gothic Lolita makeup comes from the Gothic music scene and Gothic trends that were popular while Lolita was also gaining popularity in the 2000s. Visual Kei is also a huge influence, and I feel like the people who wear Gothic Lolita and are fans of Visual Kei groups tend to be the people who do the most like heavy makeup or more creative look. People who are already interested in a separate scene that emphasizes aesthetics and makeup and fashion in its own way are obviously going to add a touch to Lolita that isn't maybe present in like sweet or classic because we don't all have the same influences at the end of the day. There is also, of course, people who wear Gothic Lolita who are influenced more by the Western Gothic music scene, and you can see elements of this with eyeliner especially. I think that is more reminiscent of like trad goth makeup, very, very heavy eyelashes, a paler face, and a more interesting lip shape that is often overdrawn and very, very dark as well. Overall, I just think that you see the most creative makeup with Gothic Lolitas, and I know that Sweet Lolita is typically known to be the substyle that wears the most makeup, but I think most Sweet Lolitas who wear a lot of makeup wear it in very similar ways and are imitating a really, really specific era. And that's not to knock Sweet Lolitas. We all know I'm a Sweet Lolita, and we all know I'm basic as fuck. But I think that Gothic Lolitas who have more heavier makeup styles, it tends to be really individual and specific to them. And I think some Gothic Lolitas who are more popular in the community or like on social media can often be known just as much for like their makeup as their coordinates because they kind of go together. At least from my experience, I've seen that happen a few times. My base is going to be the most simple so far. I'm just using my liquid foundation. I'm leaving the pale one as is this time because it's Gothic makeup, and you know, and a lot of goths use a foundation that is pale, not specifically to achieve a like white aka Caucasian look, but more like a corpsey sort of not alive anymore look. And I'm not trying to make myself look necessarily paler so much as I'm trying to make myself look, I guess, less healthy. I don't know. Goths, comment below on why you guys do this. I am literally just churning out things I've seen in TikToks which have been posted onto Instagram Reels, and is probably the most unreliable way of obtaining information about goths that have ever existed. I probably should have just asked my goth friends. Sorry, but that's what I'm going for. Anyway, it's not drastically pale here, so we're gonna move on that front. I'm not doing any blush. Kind of killed me inside. I really wanted to do a little bit of blush, but I could not find any Gothic Lolitas really wearing blush. I'm sure it happens, and when they do, it's a pretty like burgundy-ish or darkish color, which I didn't really feel like doing with this specific eye, so I just went with no blush and a very like simple type of face. I didn't do any contouring or anything like that. Not only because I don't see it that much in Lolita, but also because I kind of can't be asked, and I never do contour, so I know it would look terrible. And for the lip, instead of doing a solid black or red look, I actually decided to do more of like a bitten lip type of look, a bit of a gradient one. The gradient lip was a very popular trend in Lolita fashion in the late 2010s, and I think it kind of stuck around. This is influenced by both Japanese makeup trends and I think also like Korean makeup trends. I think it's very, very cute. I do love a good old gradient lip, and for this one I'm using a combination of a very, very dark purple and a darker sort of red burgundy lip color, and I thought it would look nice with the more like dark eye to not have a ton of dark on my lips as well. I don't really like how black lipstick looks on me, and because I'm using my natural hair for this makeup look, I especially thought it would not look super great and would not really appeal to my actual tastes. So since I'm still trying to keep this makeup look to my tastes, that's why I went with that. I feel like Gothic Lolita has kind of the most easily traceable influences given its association with VK music and the VK scene in general. Unlike the other Lolita fashion substyles, which I feel like are more influenced by brand images, models, and influencers now, I feel like Gothic Lolita still seems to be heavily influenced by its roots for not only the coordinates and themes and styles, but also the makeup and hair. And I think that's really cool because it kind of creates this like consistent look for Lolita and for Gothic Lolita that goes beyond just the clothes and that indicates really obvious history and community behind it. Here is my Gothic makeup look.
So really quickly, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know which makeup look was your favorite and whichever one is closest to your makeup style, what you're influenced by. I find it really interesting how makeup isn't really an important part of Lolita fashion, but everyone kind of has their own way of doing makeup for Lolita, you know? That's all for me. I hope you have a wonderful day and I will see you in my next video. Until then, bye bye.